What's up, shred sexuals? Welcome back. Death to the fingers. Life gets at you fast, eh? Holy smokes. Digital ID, is it? I got the emergency sort of broadcast this morning, the bat signal, if you will. They're like, oh my God, they're really going through with it. I'm like, yeah, of course. I told people years ago. And this is hilarious that I just put that video out yesterday. So follow up. I told people years ago, if you don't know how to defend your rights in a court of law, you're wasting your time on a bunch of other nonsense, and you're going to be sorry. Because now all of a sudden they're like, you can't get a job if you don't have this digital ID. So make of that what you will, but basically the government of the UK does not have the authority under law to actually do what they're doing. And you can defeat this kind of nonsense. This free speech stuff can be defeated. The migrant hotel stuff can easily be defeated. The digital ID, which we're going to go over, can easily be defeated. The world you think you know, like a lot of people are starting to figure out, is not the actual real world. It is a carefully crafted, I guess you should say, illusion to keep you locked in the matrix. And I don't mean that and the stupid stuff like they're aliens and the Anunnaki and giants and everything like that. That you have to be somehow indentured to society and you're not allowed to be your own person, your own man. A human being with their 2 feet on the ground. Once you start reading some of the legislation that the government puts out, and you really start to contemplate what that means. Like in the Municipality Act, it says all the inhabitants of the municipality are incorporated into the municipality as a body corporate. Now, what do you think that means? I mean, I get it. It's kind of a mouthful, legalese and all that kind of crap, but what does it sound like just like in common sense terms? It sounds like if you're living in a geographical area, in whatever country you're living in, Canada, the United States, the UK, whatever, Australia, it's all relevant to all of these countries. The United States is a little bit different because you have the Constitution and yours is, it's different. I'm not going to get into it, but it's these things are still true in the United States. Absolutely. Okay. So this is true across the board. Everybody's accepted this that lives in the West. Okay. It's just the crazy backwards countries that don't care, that didn't really sign on to this stuff. So the point being here is that you can exist as a human being absent the necessity of actually integrating into some sort of municipality, which is just a fancy legal term for a corporation. You're now working out of an office in a corporate structure. And the thing is when you go into your office, imagine on the wall, there's this hat rack and there are about 20 hats on there. So when you're doing your taxes, you go into the office and you put your taxpayer hat on. You're now the resident, the citizen, the taxpayer. Or whatever sort of, quasi sort of legal language they use to define you in law. Because this is an important concept. You go sort of, get your driver's license. Well, you put on that hat. It's the driver. You're now the driver. You're not Joe Blow human being behind, his personal vehicle or whatever. Conveyance. That's another thing. You got to watch the words. Vehicle means you're operating under a commercial license, but conveyance means you're driving your personal property on public roads. So I'm not going to get into the nuance, if you will, of the law, but I want you to be aware that it's simple stuff like that. You have to look up every single word and be like, what does that really mean if you want to seriously fight back? But I want to educate people and not necessarily try to train you on how to win a lawsuit. If you want to do that, you'll take it farther than it's necessary after this video. But the thing here is that, of course, that doesn't work for the government. And that's the point. After sort of the rough and nice, I was going to say, a ruffian. I was going to say that, but now it's Russian Revolution. Sorry. After that, after the First World War, after the Second World War, we're talking about probably easily 150 to 200 million people being ended in the span of like maybe 100 years. So obviously, that had a big impact. And you can see almost immediately after that, they come up with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But the problem is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is not binding in law. It was just a compact that the nations came up with to appease the general public, to be like, yeah, we kind of messed up there. We took it to an extreme, and, nobody really won. We definitely did not win. That's my personal opinion. If you know, you know. So the fact of the matter is that they're trying to do something to, take the temperature of the public down so that they didn't turn on them like, the French terror situation and start lopping off heads with guillotines. So they came up with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Very similar to, of course, the Magna Carta, the exact same play. The peasants are going nuts. The nobility's like, we're in serious trouble. We cannot stop this. So they had to bend the knee, and they came up with the Magna Carta, and that calmed it down. Universal Declaration of Human Rights after World War II. And the Nuremberg stuff and all the rest of it, man. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there where people are like, listen, negative. And the fact of the matter was this. It sort of recognized these inherent rights, but that's just it. They weren't subject to government control. And that right there is the difference. Before that, it was widely considered to be like, if you lived in Germany or the UK, Canada, wherever else, you were under the control of the government, and there's nothing you could do to stop that. You had no real say. And so you got sent off to war and drafted and all this other bad stuff. And of course, people just got sick of it. And so they started to fight back. And so they had to change the rules. And those rules basically got written in. But of course, in typical human being fashion, realistically speaking, the powers that be were like, well, we got a good thing going here. And we've had that going for a very, very long time. Why do we want to give it up to the grubby peasants? And they don't want to. So they built some poison pills into the human rights stuff that basically fake you out into thinking that the human rights stuff is kind of like a pipe dream. It's like best case scenario, when in reality it actually is binding law upon countries that can be actioned in any court of law domestically. So after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the thing is that they were like, well, it's not enough. Because people are like, well, this isn't binding in law. So they sat down, they wrote the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties in 1969. That's a very important document. I recommend anybody go read that, especially Articles 9 and 10 on the language of the treaties. That includes the international covenants that we're going to talk about in 2 seconds here. So that's why that's important. The language of the treaty has been debated. It's been sort of finalized and then ratified into law. So it doesn't matter what somebody said afterwards or their interpretation or they're doing further explanation. Whatever it says in the covenant is what it means. Then you get into sections 26 and 27. One is pacta sunt servanda, which means you have to honor this contract. You have to honor this treaty in good faith, meaning you can't break the treaty. The next one basically prohibits the state parties from creating domestic laws that would prevent the carrying out of the duties, responsibilities, and obligations under the treaty. Okay, so they can't be like, oh, well, we can't give you your treaty sort of, or this inalienable right that's covered under this international treaty because it's not incorporated into domestic law. That's happened a lot in Canada. It's probably happened a lot all over the place. They can't do that, and you can cite the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties to stop it immediately, to be like 27. You can't invoke your own internal law. We had a law here, a court case, Zinger versus the Queen in like 71 or something like that. It's before the international covenants even took place, where they're like, you can't really, renege on your obligations anymore. You signed it into law, so now it's law. And this law ultimately is incredibly important when we get to Article 53. But Article 35, I think it is. It might be 33, but I thought it was 35. I can't remember which one. Goes into the nature of interpretation of the language. It's supposed to be the plain English meaning if you're reading it in English. If it says all peoples, that means every person that makes up a people, right? Or everyone, that means everyone. It doesn't mean there's like an exclusive group. Again, the wording and stuff matters because they'll try to contort the wording. That's how you fight them. You're like, nah. You see, it's the plain English meaning. It's not this more esoteric legal meaning that you're trying to substitute. No, it's the one that's in the Oxford Dictionary. It's the one that's in Merriam-Webster. Done. And then, of course, 53 is massive, which basically states that any violation of the international peremptory norms, meaning human rights, is void ab initio, which means it's void at the point when the legislation is enacted, meaning it's of no force or effect. It's on the books, but if you were to challenge that law in court, the law would fail because it's void since the time they actually enacted it. Okay? So if they enact laws, unless you challenge them in court to be like, this is unconstitutional, they can keep them on the books and basically apply them against you because remember from the preamble, or well, I guess not remember, I did mention in the one video, but we're going to talk about it in the international covenants. In the preamble, it states that you, as an individual, you have a duty to other individuals to strive for the promotion and protection of human rights. And that's a very telling statement, strive. It's not like they just exist and you can just be like, yeah, I know I'm protected. Doesn't work that way. You have to be the person that goes to court and be like, under Article 2 here, I can bring this matter before the court of competent jurisdiction, and this is unconstitutional according to the international peremptory norms covered under section or Article 4.2 and Articles 16 and 1, which we're going to talk about next. 4.2 is just what they call the non-derogation clause, meaning even in a national emergency, certain rights covered in the international covenants that are now covered by the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. That's why they did that first. They formalized the language and the power of an international treaty binding on every single country that signs on to that document, includes the Canada, the UK, and all that. I don't think the United States did, though. They're like, ooh, nope. But Canada, the UK, Australia, for sure. Absolutely. So good for us. But my point being here is that these non-derogation clauses, basically, you can never suspend these rights. And 16 being the most important from the civil and political rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 16, which says everyone has the right to legal personality, right? And the thing is that's a huge misconception right there. What the digital ID does is basically say, you're this legal person that we designate you. That's how it works. If you go to our Constitution in the 1867 one, you'll see that the minister or the attorney general, and then it goes to like the Privy Council, and then the minister can effectively appoint anyone into any corporate position within the corporate entity Canada and all of its subsidiaries, including the provinces and so on and so forth, all the way down to the municipality, where you're incorporated as a body corporate. That's how the scam works. You're a human being. You're living in a city. The city creates laws that says you are now a corporate body inside this corporation. We don't need to ask for your permission. You can challenge that using human rights. And that's a very useful one because now you're taking on a municipality and not the federal government. So keep that one in mind and can be very powerful. No more property taxes. That's another way of getting at it. You're like, who's responsible for property taxes? Me, the individual, or like this body corporate? Because the body corporate is just a legal title that I have to actually consent to take recognition and then take on the duties and obligations. Obviously, otherwise it's slavery and servitude, two things that are forbidden under the international covenants, right? So 16 basically means that you already have legal personality as something we call a natural person. That's a human being in law, a natural person. But they'll say that you're the resident or the citizen or whatever, some other thing other than natural person or an individual or a human being. And that's the linchpin. You see, under the Vienna Convention, they can't invoke a law domestically that says Article 16 isn't actionable in domestic law. Article 16 says you already have legal personality. In Article 1, everyone has the right to self-determination, right? It's all peoples, but that means every single human being. You can't have a people without a group of individuals, right? So their logic is a little silly there, but I understand it. And they tried to turn, there's one's a classic, they tried to turn that into just like smaller indigenous groups. They tried to clarify, if you will, in these UN comments, which can be very helpful. If you're looking for the free speech stuff, it's under Article 19. I suggest you go read the UN comments on Article 19 of the International Covenants on Civil and Political Rights. I can't remember what it is. Maybe it's 11 or 34 or something like that, but that is 7 or 8 pages that's very worthwhile reading. And then, of course, you can access Article 19 right from the International Covenant. Again, exactly the same way you can do Article 16. And the right to self-determination there as the individual, the right to self-actualize, of course, grants you the ultimate authority to be like, I don't want to be the legal creature and you're trying to limit my right to just exist over here as the natural person, but still have access to all of this stuff. And that's just it. When he's like, you can't get a job without actually having this digital ID. That right there is creating a discriminatory barrier that is unconstitutional because under the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, also signed on by the UK, I'm pretty sure, I know Canada is, I'm not sure about Australia, but maybe it's possible. But the UK for sure, I looked into it, and there's the right to work right there. And the government has to secure the right for you. It's imperative. So again, coupled with Article 16 and the right to work now, plus if they're like, well, we're going to interfere with your ability to have subsistence, which is a violation of Article 1, you can now jump over to the economic, social, and cultural rights one and be like, there's the adequate standard of living. When you start affecting my ability to subsist, then you can jump down one more and basically get into the highest possible mental and physical health. Go read it for yourself. That's actually almost verbatim. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but that's just it. You see what I mean? You have all of these conditions. They have to create the optimal conditions for you to live a physically and mentally healthy life, where you have adequate housing, food, and clothing. And obviously housing, that goes with heat and all the rest of it, you know, all the amenities. Obviously, having a house with no water, heat, or anything else, it's kind of pointless. You're still going to freeze to death. Stupid, right? Then you have Article 1, self-determination. Article 3, the ability to exercise your rights whenever you want. 4, which is going to be the non-derogation clause. They can never remove some of these rights. And most of the important ones are already covered. Right? 8, no slavery, no servitude. 7, liberty. You've got 16, the right to legal personality. 19, you've got the right to free speech. Then there's the right to conscience. That's Article 18 right there. That's a huge one. You can be like, this digital ID thing is contrary to my conscience under Article 18 because I have religious preclusions in it. I feel like this is the mark of the Antichrist. I'm not kidding you. This isn't a joke. You can absolutely say that. And there's almost nothing these people can say to stop you either. And most people have a very firm conviction about that. That's why I'm throwing it out there right now. And there ain't nothing they can say. They'll be like, oh, we can limit it. No, you can't. If you see evil from a moral and ethical standpoint with respect to human rights, you would have to do something. And that's just it. You cannot have a conscience and then not be able to exercise the outcome of such conscious decision to be like, I can't agree with this. I cannot allow it to go on. That's how evil is perpetuated. So obviously that's going to defeat any stupid argument they basically throw it at you. And again, notice under Article 4.2, it says Article 18 is peremptory, meaning it's covered under Article 53 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, meaning any law that they enact to try to limit your ability to exercise your conscience is immediately void. It has no force of law, none. You can just ignore it. Or it provides a lawful excuse in a criminal situation. If they're like, well, why didn't you help this person? I'm like, it was two terrorists basically going at each other. I figured one less terrorist was a good thing for the world. And I didn't want to get involved because on a conscious level, I'm a pacifist. There it is. Job's done. Case closed. You see what I mean? You have choices. You can make choices like that. And there's not much the government can do because Article 2, go read it for yourself on both of them. The government is required to not only allow you to exercise your right and defend it in a court of law, and no, you don't have to know their system. And if they make you try to do that, then just go back to the economic, social, and cultural rights one and be like, where's the educational material to allow me to exercise my rights effectively in this forum? And they'll be like, you have 50 years to basically put this in place, but I can't find a single repository of information to teach me how to basically access and navigate this system as a layman. So now all of a sudden you have more discrimination based on status because you're saying the layman is not qualified anymore to petition a court of competent jurisdiction for a remedy under the Constitution or human rights because they're not a trained lawyer. All forbidden. Article 2. Also Article 25 or 6 or something like that. Right. So that's how you defeat it. You start to read the actual law. You start with the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. You read through it. 9, 10, 26, 27, 33 or 35. You'll know which one I'm talking about because it talks about the language. It's supposed to be interpreted in the broad sort of sense, not some sort of very specific legalese type, narrow definition, negative. Meaning dictionary meanings. 53 and 65 is also worth checking out. I'll let you check that one out for surprise for yourself. 53 though, definitely. And then of course, get into the international covenants. Start reading it. Read through the preamble. You'll notice things right away. The human family, the human person, the human being. There's 3 different characters in law there. What does dignity mean? What does, inherent mean? And that's just it. At the end of the day, what the covenants are really saying is all the state parties, the UK, Canada, Australia, all the rest of it, recognize inherently that the rights in these covenants exist inside of you right now and can be exercised at any point in time you want. They don't have to be in any sort of domestic law. There's no special process, nothing. You just file your lawsuit the best you can and be like, there's not much information here, but this is clearly unconstitutional, and just make your argument and then just have lots of people do that, and that'll be the end of it. You can start a sort of lawfare campaign of your own, basically in the courts. Just do it all over the place and just flood them with the same lawsuit over and over and over again. And they'll be like, there's not much we can do. People are invoking their rights. But that's just it. You got to sort of understand what they are and then start to break down this information to be like, what is the most pertinent ones? Like 1 and 2, obviously, 3, 5. 4 and 5 are important, but 5's especially important too. 7's huge. 9. You've got 16. There's the right not to be imprisoned for your inability to fulfill a contract. That's credit card debt, divorce, a whole bunch of stuff like that. Okay? You know what I mean? Like all the things, usury, like forced statutory recognition. So you're no longer a human being when you go to divorce court. Now you're the spouse, the ex-spouse, the husband, whatever it is. And then they say the husband has to go to jail. And since you're unknowingly based and you haven't invoked your rights, since they just like, you're the husband and that's why you go to jail. It's as simple as that. But you're like, well, hold on. You petition another court, be like, this court's not even competent to hear a human rights claim. And so why am I being forced down to this lower court level when I should be able to petition up here at the inherent jurisdiction, right, with human rights? Again, it's all about discrimination, equality, and equity and whatnot. And once you find the slightest little bit of imbalance, you're like, this person's getting paid, but I have to do jury duty for free for the first 10 days. So does that make jury duty mandatory? No. Why? Because that's slavery or servitude. Anybody that tells you, you have to do this or I'll put you in jail and fine you $250,000 if you don't comply, okay, that's coercion. That's not voluntary. It's not consent. Nobody came to you and was like, we want you to do jury duty. And you're like, no, I don't want to do it. I've got other things going on right now. Sorry, I don't have time. They're like, okay, fine. But if they came to you and you're like, we want you to do jury duty, you're like, okay. They're like, we're prepared to pay you $10,000. Sign me up, kid. Right? Or if it's like less than 10 days, we'll give you $4,000. Okay, sure. I'm down. $4,000 for 10 days worth of work? Awesome. We'll just take that instead of sending, $50 million to Ethiopia to make sure that the wheat is gender neutral or whatever it is. You can just take and transfer that into a slush fund that gets paid out to the citizens of the country that have to carry out this duty because of the administration of justice, which is one of the, basic responsibilities of all the state parties when it comes to justice and order and all the rest of that. But notice how they instantly take advantage. The judge gets paid, the lawyers get paid, the stenographer gets paid, the law clerks get paid, the security guards are getting paid. You know who doesn't get paid? The juror. Where do they take the jury pool from? The average Joe out in society. That's why you have to be like, fight back against stuff like that and be like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to do stuff like that. I'm not going to about to fill out this form in the first place because I feel like it's manufactured consent. Why would you have me fill out this form full of generic information that 99% of it you already know and then have me sign it at the bottom? Why would that be necessary if it's mandatory? Why would I have to sign something if it was mandatory? It sounds like you're trying to manufacture a contract, which it is a legal contract for you to take recognition as the juror. A legal contract for you to enter into recognition as whatever statutory creature, the citizen, the resident, or whatever else it is that is governed by the law framework of the digital ID. The question is do you have to do that? And can you be compelled, like they're saying, which is no. Because you have the right to remain in your full legal capacity, you have the right to access work as you see fit without any other preconditions. It's not your responsibility at any point in time, and this is the last part here, is think about proportionality. Think about essentially the sort of minimally impairing. Okay, is it easier to sort of administrate this massive bureaucracy that's got to put out the digital IDs and then maintain the database and all the rest of that stuff, programming and all the people and the rest of that, and then getting all this stuff out to the individuals in the country? Is that less or more work than just shutting down the boats that are coming across the channel with the Navy you already have and the soldiers you're already paying for, and then just remigrating these people out of the country? Which one's easier? The tiny little percentage, like maybe 1 million people or 2 million, comparably to the 60 million that are here with respect to the UK now? Those numbers aren't probably accurate, but still, if it was like 50 million and the other was 15 million, which one's the lesser of two evils, if you will, right? So that's just it. Once it becomes a situation, it's like way easier to get rid of the 15 million people. Like we already have laws on the books. We already have processes in place. We already have courts to deal with this. All the rest of that, just invest a bit more money into that. Instead of spending it all over here on this digital ID, spend it over here to expedite this process. And that's it. Digital ID, cooked. Also, proportionality. Does the government really think that after it's failed essentially in almost every endeavor it's ever taken on in the past 100 years that it's going to be qualified to look after your most precious possession, the very nature of sort of your future identification? These people are obsessed with it. Why should you have to give it away to them for free? You want my ID? License it. Because where's the consideration? And then just make the number so astronomically large that they can never actually meet the condition. That's not unfair. No one says that you actually have to play ball with these people. No one, ever. And that's just it. It means you have to take a stand. You have to find some court cases. And let me tell you, The UK, man, that was the OG sort of like independence crowd, but way before Washington with Lord Coke and all the rest of them. They basically upended the apple cart massively. They're like down with instead of down with the patriarchy, it's down with the monarchy, man. And they're just like private property rights are king because they understood they had way more to lose. So they're like, why don't we just even the playing field? Now these people think that they can get to our position. They'll never get there, but they can think it. Fortunately for him, basically the merchant class sparked up, and then all of a sudden they didn't see that sort of its own separate little oligarchy, you know what I mean, just emerge from the ether like another monster that was going to go head to head with the monarchy and basically supplant it. Let's face it, business is king, and that's just it. These are business considerations that people want taken care of. It's easier to monitor you. It's easier to control you and all the rest of that stuff when they have the panopticon. But, of course, you don't have to comply. And it doesn't have to be violent or anything else. You can just file court cases. And honestly, your lawsuit only has to be a couple pages long. And you can easily go into your own rules of civil procedure, most likely, or whatever they're called, the rules of law. And there'll be at least one. Just do it with AI. Be like, are there exemptions to the form and format of these law processes, you know, because I'm a layman. And they'll be like, oh yeah, no, use rule this and this from this legal thing. You know what I mean? And just write it down. And be like, okay, yeah, no, I'm invoking these two rules from the rules of civil procedure. So my lawsuit can just be more like presented as a layman. I don't have to actually try to make it conform. And I believe that that's acceptable because of Article 2 under the international covenants, both of them. And then, of course, 13. And then there's the Declaration of the Rights and Responsibilities of Individuals, the DRRI. And there's much more after that. It'll be a big, huge title. But that's another essential document to basically human rights defenders. That's a very powerful document that a lot of countries signed on to acknowledge and whatnot. That'll give you plenty of ammunition. Articles 9 and 10, 1 and 2, they're just devastating. So that's my point. Once you're kind of given this opportunity, you can use the international law. And then as soon as they try to be like, well, you have to do it under the domestic stuff, then you drop the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, and that just ends it. Now they have no argument and they have to defend your rights by ending this digital tyranny and all the rest of that nonsense. So if you invest the work right now, you could easily get an injunction in. If you're already a lawyer, you could look into this stuff and have it done in a weekend. You know what I mean? It's not really that complicated. There's about 15 pieces involved in the puzzle, but I don't want to tell you the exact sequence and all the rest of that stuff because I don't want you going to court thinking you're king shit and then all of a sudden realize you can't handle your business because you looked at it for 6 weeks instead of 16 years and the judge just turned you into a pretzel and you get thrown in jail. If you really want to do it, you'll figure it out from there. There's the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. You can use the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, both of the international covenants. Find out if you're a certified or a signatory to it and it's been ratified in your country. Okay? And then find, domestically speaking, how you exercise things under Article 2. And if you want to do it and you want to take the safe route, if you file a declaration with the court asking them how to invoke Article 2, so that you can bring a matter before the court under the human rights rubric and then just outline either Article 18 or Article 16, Article 1, 3, 5, and 7. Remember, liberty of choice. Liberty does not just mean movement. There's a whole different article for that, Article 12. Liberty means choice. You're free to choose. It's also under self-determination. And like I said, don't let them pull the whole, it's indigenous peoples. No, it's not. Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaty, the language, Articles 9 and 10. It's been debated, it's been ratified, and then signed into law. That's it. All peoples. I don't think that you can be ambiguous about that. Every single human being has the right of self-determination, obviously. If you didn't, how exactly are you getting through life? And you can actually marry it up, if you will, with the right to work. Be like, well, how does self-determination not work with the right to work where you're supposed to be able to freely choose your profession? So again, All the breadcrumbs are there. It's up to you to basically create a coherent argument. Don't get psycho about it. Use 3 or 4 points. Bing, bang, boom. That would be enough of a shockwave. It's like throwing a big boulder into a placid pond, and there it is. That'll be enough. And then, of course, organize. You can stop the migrant hotels. You can stop the boats. Any condition that's created that can infringe upon the rights under Article 5 is forbidden. They cannot create an infringement. So if you have migrants coming into the country and causing problems and all the rest of that stuff with law and order and all the rest of it, there's the adequate standard of living, and then there's the law and order stuff. You'd be like, you're not actually protecting us. You can't protect us. So either allow ourselves to arm ourselves for the inherent right to life, or get rid of these people and remigrate them. Watch how fast these people get thrown out. If the option is arm the public or turf these people out, and again, you have the inherent right to life. You cannot be arbitrarily deprived of your life. Therefore, that means you inherently have access to the tools necessary to defend it. Again, I get it. I'm really throwing a lot of stuff at you here, but I'm trying to be more general to show you that that's the thought process. If you have the inherent right to life and you can't be arbitrarily deprived of it, well, how would you be able to prevent that deprivation? See you in the next one. Good luck. Never stop fighting.